Have you ever wondered what truly happens in someone's heart when you vanish without a word? What floods their mind when your silence is louder than anything you could have said? And what if your absence speaks more powerfully than your presence ever could? Disappearing is not just leaving a room. It is leaving a space inside someone's life at first glance. It may look like silence, like an ending with no drama. But silence is never just silence. It is a presence of its own. It echoes, it unsettles, it demands answers without ever asking a question. We've all seen what happens when someone pulls away. At first there's confusion. Then comes the flood of emotions, anger, sadness, denial. But beneath all of that is the deeper truth. When you disappear, you ignite a process inside them that is more powerful than any argument, more lasting than any goodbye. This video is not about games or manipulation. It's about understanding human nature, the way absence reshapes perception, the way silence stirs the mind far more than words ever can. The Stoics knew this. Epictetus said that people are disturbed not by things, but by the view they take of them. And when you disappear, you leave them nothing but their own view, and that view can consume them. So let's step into this journey together. What exactly do they feel when you simply disappear? And why does your silence echo louder than sound itself? The very first feeling they encounter is confusion. It is raw, immediate, and almost unbearable. People expect closure. They expect words, explanations, a reason they can hold on to. When none is given, the mind rushes to fill the void with guesses. At first, they may think it's a mistake. Perhaps you're busy. Perhaps you didn't see their message. Perhaps there's a technical issue. But as time stretches, denial turns into unease, and ease turns into panic, and panic often transforms into self-blame. They start asking themselves questions. Did I say something wrong? Did I miss a sign? Was I not enough? Their thoughts race, spinning stories faster than they can control, and every possible answer hurts. This is the hidden weight of silence, unlike words, which can be debated, challenged, or dismissed. Silence leaves no room for argument. It is a blank page onto which the mind writes its darkest fears, and yet, that is why it's so powerful. Because when you disappear, you force them to sit not with you but with themselves. They must confront their own insecurities, their own unmet needs, their own expectations. Confusion gives way to realization, slowly. They understand that your absence is intentional. It is not an accident. It is a choice, and choice carries weight. It says more than excuses ever could. But this realization stings. It burns with a sharpness words cannot deliver. Because if you left by choice, it means something in them or something in the connection was not enough to make you stay. And that thought is more painful than rejection. Spoken aloud, they begin replaying memories, searching for cracks they missed. They recall the last conversation, every message, every glance, dissecting them for hidden meanings. This becomes an endless cycle of mental excavation, a desperate search for clarity that never arrives. And here is where the Stoic perspective sheds light. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. your silence becomes the truest act. Because by saying nothing, you say everything. By leaving, you reveal that something was no longer right. To them, however, it feels like abandonment. It feels like betrayal. And so confusion hardens and hurt. This hurt is not only emotional but physical. The body responds to loss the same way it responds to danger. The heart pounds, the chest tightens, sleep becomes restless. The nervous system treats absence as threatened in a sense. It threatens their sense of stability. From hurt, many slide into anger. Anger at you for leaving. Anger at themselves for not seeing it coming. Anger at the world for being so merciless. This anger is the mind's way of reclaiming power because confusion and hurt feel powerless. But anger feels like strength. Yet beneath the surface, it is still pain. In this storm of emotions, your silence becomes a mirror. It reflects not only who you were in their life, but also who they are without you. And this is the cruelest and most liberating part, because in your absence, they are forced to see themselves clearly. Some will shrink under this reflection. Others will grow. Some will resent you forever. Others will eventually thank you. But all will feel, and they will feel deeply. This is why disappearance has always been one of the most powerful human experiences. It triggers every part of the psyche. Confusion, hurt, anger, reflection in leaving. You give them something to wrestle with that they cannot escape. And ironically, this often makes you larger in absence than you ever were in presence. Because presence can be taken for granted. But absence demands attention. As Seneca once said, light griefs are loquacious, but the great are dumb. Their silence about your disappearance, or their loud anger, both reveal the same thing: you mattered. And that is the first truth of disappearance. They feel confusion. They feel hurt. They feel the sting of a choice made without them. But confusion and hurt are only the beginning. Because once the initial storm quiets, something deeper begins to stir. Your absence does not simply end the connection, it reshapes it. In page 2, we step into what happens next, when silence no longer feels temporary, but becomes a haunting presence that forces them to reckon with who they are and what they truly lost. We ended the last chapter with confusion and hurt, the first storm that rises when someone realizes you're truly gone. But emotions never stay still. Like waves against the shore, they keep shifting, and once the confusion fades into clarity, and the sting of hurt begins to numb, something deeper takes root. They begin to understand that your absence is not temporary. It is not a pause. It is a decision. And in that realization, a new series of emotions awaken, emotions more complex, more raw, and often more haunting than the first. The rise of obsession. After the initial shock, many slip into obsession. The silence you left behind becomes unbearable. It nags at them like an unfinished sentence. They cannot stop themselves from checking their phone, rereading old conversations, scrolling through photos, anything that ties them back to you. It is almost mechanical. They wake up and wonder if you've reached out. They go through their day haunted by the thought, what are they doing now? Do they think of me? Are they gone forever? The irony is striking. Your absence becomes more present than your presence ever was, because when you were there, they had you to lean on. Now that you're gone, All they have are questions with no answers, and questions left unanswered dig deeper than facts. This obsession is not just emotional but chemical. Psychologists remind us that attachment releases dopamine, and when that attachment is broken abruptly, the brain craves it like withdrawal. That craving can turn them restless, desperate, even irrational. They may even start to create small test sending, a casual message, telling you, or trying to provoke a reaction, not because they want closure, but because silence feels unbearable, and when no response comes, the obsession only deepens. The sting of invisibility. One of the hardest emotions they face is invisibility. To feel invisible is to feel erased, as though their presence in your life never mattered. It cuts deeper than rejection because rejection says you mattered, but not enough. Invisibility says you never mattered at all. Your disappearance forces them to confront this fear. Did they ever truly mean something to you? Were the moments shared genuine, or just illusions they held onto? This thought grows in their chest like a thorn. Every memory becomes tainted with doubt. Every laugh, every promise, every shared glance is now under suspicion, and suspicion eats at peace like rust eats at steel. To the Stoics, this is a crucial lesson. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If they are right to do this, accept it. If they are wrong, do not be deceived by it." In other words, their invisibility is not a truth about them, but about how they choose to interpret your absence. Still, the sting is real, and it lingers. Anger and resentment. Once invisibility has sunk its teeth, anger rises. Anger feels safer than sadness. Anger feels strong where hurt feels weak. They may curse your name, paint you as cold, accuse you. In their thoughts of cruelty, this is not always genuine anger, it is armor. It is their attempt to shield themselves from the vulnerability of loss. Because to admit they are wounded is painful, but to clothe themselves in rage feels like reclaiming power. But this too comes at a cost. Anger burns the vessel that holds it. Resentment makes them replay every slight, every disappointment. It magnifies flaws that once seemed small, and in doing so, it binds them tighter to you. For every time they rage at you, they are still thinking of you. As Seneca said, anger is an acid that can do more harm to the vessel in which it is stored than to anything on which it is poured. Their anger toward you is really a prison they build for themselves. And though they may slam the door, they are still the ones locked inside. The pull of longing, and yet, beneath the anger, another feeling brews: longing. Longing is different from obsession. Obsession is frantic. It wants answers. Longing is quieter. It wants presence. They double you. You'll find themselves missing the sound of your voice, the way you laughed at small things, the comfort of your presence. Longing creeps in at unexpected moments while they sip coffee, while they walk alone, while they lie awake at night. It is this longing that confuses them most. Because how can they feel such tenderness for the one who left them in silence? It feels like betrayal of self, and yet it is human. We do not choose what the heart remembers. We only endure it, and sometimes longing softens even their anger. The very person they cursed in one breath becomes the person they ache for in the next. This emotional seesaw is exhausting, and it is all born from the void your disappearance created. Reflection in the mirror of absence, eventually, obsession, invisibility, anger, and longing all lead to one place reflection, because no storm can rage forever. At some point, they tire. At some point, they look inward. Your disappearance forces them to ask, who am I without this person? What did I lose? What did I gain? Why does this silence cut me so deeply? And here lies the gift wrapped in the wound. For in your absence, they face themselves, perhaps for the first time. The Stoics always believed adversity was the path to wisdom. Epictetus wrote, "Circumstances don't make the man. They only reveal him to himself. In losing you, they discover themselves. In silence, they uncover the voice they ignored. In invisibility, they seek their own worth." And yet, reflection is not the end. It is only the middle. Because once they begin to face themselves, they stand before a choice. Will they collapse under the weight of loss, or will they rebuild into someone new? In page 3, we dive into this turning point, the birth of resilience, and the rituals that help transform absence into strength. We closed page 2 standing at the threshold of reflection. They had cycled through obsession, invisibility, anger, and longing, and now they were left staring at themselves in the mirror of your absence. But reflection is only the beginning. Once the dust of emotion settles, a deeper transformation begins. They stand at a crossroads: either remain trapped in the cycle of pain, or take the silence you left behind and use it as fuel for growth. And this is where the true power of your disappearance takes shape. The emergence of respect. In the early stages, they may have seen your disappearance as betrayal, cruelty, abandonment. But as time passes, a new awareness surfaces: respect. Why? Because disappearing requires strength. It requires discipline to remove yourself from something unhealthy, or from a bond that no longer serves you. At first, they may resist this idea, but slowly, they begin to recognize it. They see that silence is not weakness. Silence is power. You did not argue, you did not beg, you did not explain yourself endlessly. You simply acted, and action carries more weight than words ever could. Respect does not always mean agreement, but it does mean recognition, and eventually, they recognize that your disappearance was not about them, it was about you choosing sovereignty. Jealousy and comparison. With respect often comes jealousy. They wonder, how can you walk away so easily? How can you rebuild so quickly? How can you thrive while they still hate? Jealousy gnaws at them as they scroll through their feeds, see your progress, or simply imagine you smiling somewhere else. They begin to compare themselves not just to you, but to the life they believe you are now living. Comparison is a thief of peace, and in their mind, your absence becomes proof that they were not enough. They question themselves: was I lacking? Was I unworthy? Was there something I could have done? The Stoics warned against comparison. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not waste the rest of your life wondering what others think of you. Live as if you are dying already." But jealousy is rarely rational. It is visceral, and in the shadow of your disappearance, it thrives. The awakening of regret. When jealousy fades, regret often takes its place. Regret is heavier than anger, sharper than longing. Because regret is not just about you, it is about them and the choices they made. They replay conversations and wish they had spoken differently. They revisit moments and wish they had acted with more kindness, more patience, more presence. Regret whispers, if only I had done this, maybe they would have stayed. It is a painful loop, because regret feeds on the past, a place no one can change. And yet, it is inescapable for those who have lost someone in silence. The Stoics would say regret is wasted energy, for the past cannot be altered. Yet in the rawness of loss, regret feels like the truest emotion of all. Growth through solitude. One of the most profound feelings they experience is growth through solitude. In your absence, they are forced to sit alone with themselves. At first, solitude feels like loneliness, a heavy emptiness. But over time, it shifts. They begin to see solitude as a space for self-discovery. They learn to enjoy their own company. They pick up old hobbies, chase forgotten dreams, and slowly, painfully, they begin to rebuild. Solitude becomes a teacher. It shows them they can survive without constant validation. It shows them they are stronger than they believed. Epictetus once said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In solitude, they learn to be misunderstood, to walk alone, and in that walking, they grow. So by now, your absence has carried them through storms of obsession, anger, longing, regret, and finally into reflection, solitude, and growth. But this is not the end. For the next stage is transformation, the turning of inner change into outer strength. In page 4, we will explore how your silence becomes not just their awakening, but their rebirth. We ended page 3 with independence rising. From solitude came strength. From reflection came accountability. And slowly, your absence began to shape not just their emotions, but their identity. But what happens when this independence matures? When the raw pain of disappearance no longer stings, but instead fuels transformation? This is the stage where absence turns into alchemy, where what was once lost begins to become power. The birth of resilience. Resilience does not arrive overnight. It is carved. It is shaped. It is earned through sleepless nights, heavy thoughts, and moments of weakness turned into wisdom. At first, they stumble. They may try to return to old patterns. They may still feel the urge to reach for you. But every time they resist, resilience is born. Like a muscle, it strengthens with use. They start to see that pain does not define them, it refines them. That scars are not marks of shame, they are proof of survival, and in this recognition, they stand taller, breathe deeper, move with more assurance. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Your disappearance, once seen as obstacle, now becomes their path. Clarity and redirection. With resilience comes clarity. For the first time, the fog of obsession and regret begins to lift. They see not only what was lost, but what was never truly theirs to begin with. Your silence has stripped away illusions, the fantasy of what could have been. the excuses they once made, the denial they clung to, and in that stripping away, they are left with truth. This clarity redirects their energy. Instead of chasing what has vanished, they begin to pour themselves into new pursuits, a career, a passion, a calling they once ignored. What felt like rejection has become redirection. What felt like loss has become liberation. The spark of gratitude. It may seem strange, but gratitude often follows clarity. They start to whisper thank you in the quiet, not for the pain, but for the growth it forced. Thank you for teaching them the weight of silence. Thank you for revealing the strength they did not know they had. Thank you for disappearing, so that they might finally appear to themselves. Gratitude softens the sharp edges of memory. Where once they cursed your absence, now they see it as a turning point. Seneca wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Your disappearance was their friction, yet it polished them into something stronger, steadier, and more radiant than before. The rebuilding of identity. With resilience, clarity, and gratitude, they begin to rebuild, piece by piece. They construct a new identity, one no longer tied to your validation. This rebuilding is not dramatic, but steady. They change their routines. They shift their priorities. They learn to value their own voice more than the echo of someone else's. And as this new self emerges, they begin to see your disappearance not as the end of their story, but as the end of a chapter. Necessary, ending that cleared space for a new beginning. The emergence of inner peace. The final gift of your absence is inner peace, a peace not fragile, not dependent, not conditional, but grounded, solid, unshakable. They stop seeking explanations. They stop waiting for closure. They stop wondering where you are or what you think. Instead, they anchor themselves in the present moment. This peace is not loud. It does not announce itself. It simply arrives like dawn, quiet, steady, inevitable, and once it takes root, they realize something extraordinary. They no longer resent you. They no longer ache for you. They no longer fear silence, for they have learned that silence is not empty. Silence is full of lessons, full of clarity, full of power. The circle of transformation. So where do they stand now? They have moved through confusion, obsession, invisibility, anger, longing, regret, accountability, solitude, independence, and now resilience. What was once a wound has become wisdom. What was once absence has become abundance. And this is the quiet paradox your disappearance creates. By removing yourself from their life, you have forced them back into their own. But this journey does not end with peace. For peace, if not lived, risks becoming stagnant. The next step is integration. How do they take the resilience, the gratitude, and the peace they found, and carry it into every part of their life? In page 5, we explore how this transformation moves outward, into relationships, into choices, into a new way of being. They began in confusion. They stumbled through anger. They drowned in longing. They stood face to face with regret. But through each stage, through solitude, through independence, through resilience, they arrived at peace. Your disappearance was not just absence, it was a mirror. It reflected everything they had avoided, everything they had denied, everything they had left unhealed. And though it hurt, though it burned, it forced them to grow. This is the secret of silence. It is never empty. Silence speaks louder than words. It carries lessons no conversation could ever teach. It strips away illusion. Yes, and leaves only truth. They discovered clarity. They rebuilt identity. They created boundaries. They practiced detachment. They learned to walk with peace, not as a mask, but as a muscle trained by fire. And in that fire, they were reborn. Not weaker, not broken, but sharper, stronger, calmer, wiser. So what do they feel when you disappear? They feel the storm. They feel the void. They feel the weight of every unanswered question. But then slowly they feel themselves, for the first time, fully, without distraction, without distortion. They stand in their own light. They walk in their own path. They rise in their own strength. This is the paradox. Your disappearance seemed like loss, but in truth, it was the greatest gift you could have given, because in the end they did not lose you. They found themselves. We began with confusion, a silence that rattled the heart, a void that begged for answers. They wondered why you vanished. They replayed every detail, searching for clues. That confusion was the first wound sharp, bewildering, disorienting. Then came obsession, the constant replay, the checking of messages, the scanning of memory for meaning. It was the storm after the silence, and it swallowed them whole. But silence has its own design. It leads them to invisibility, the sudden weight of being unseen. They felt erased, discarded, reduced to a ghost in someone else's story. And yet invisibility carried its own strange gift. It forced them to see themselves. From invisibility rose anger, not just at you, but at themselves. Anger for the giving, the waiting, the needing. Anger became fuel, but also a trap, a fire that burned until it could no longer sustain itself. And when the flames died, longing took its place, a hunger for what was lost, for what could have been. Longing softened the anger, but deepened the ache. Yet longing carries lessons. It reveals what we truly value and what we must let go. Regret followed, heavy, relentless. A teacher wrapped in pain. They regretted words not said, actions not taken, trust too easily given. But regret, like a mirror, reflects not only mistakes but the possibility of wisdom through regret. Accountability emerges, the realization that blame cannot rebuild a life. That growth begins not with excuses, but with responsibility. They began to reclaim their power, step by step, choice by choice. From accountability came solitude, not loneliness, but chosen space, time to breathe, to reflect, to realign. Solitude revealed independence, an inner fortress they never knew they had. They discovered that they could stand alone, and standing alone, they were stronger than before. And finally, transformation, the 10th truth, not a single moment, but a slow rebirth, a self shaped by silence, strengthened by storms. Anchored in peace, the thread that weaves them together. Confusion taught awareness, Obsession taught limits. Invisibility taught self-worth. Anger taught restraint. Longing taught release. Regret taught wisdom. Accountability taught strength. Solitude taught clarity. Independence taught sovereignty. Transformation taught mastery. Each stage was a rung on the ladder, each emotion a stone in the path. Without one, the next could not exist. The disappearance was not just absence, it was the architect of change. This journey is more than emotional recovery. It is the essence of Stoicism, choosing to master what is within and release what is beyond. It is the practice of seeing silence not as punishment, but as instruction. To disappear is to remind others and ourselves that presence is sacred, that peace is a discipline, that strength is built not in noise, but in the quiet choice to remain unmoved. So when silence comes into your life, when someone vanishes, or when you yourself choose to step away, remember, it is never empty. It carries lessons waiting to be heard. And now, if these words sparked something within you, remember this truth. Every silence can become a teacher. Every ending can become a beginning. And every disappearance can become a doorway back to yourself. Stay grounded. Stay grateful. Stay stoic. This is not about loss. It is about return. Not about endings, but beginnings. Not about silence, but sovereignty. Because the greatest gift of disappearance is not what it takes away, it is what it leaves behind. The chance to meet yourself, the chance to rise without apology, the chance to walk forward with calm, with clarity, with mastery. And so the story ends where it began, with silence. But now you know silence is not weakness. It is strength. It is not erasure. It is revelation. You are not less when someone disappears. You are more. Because in their absence, you discovered presence your own. If this truth gave you even a moment of clarity, don't keep it inside. Like this video to let the message echo further. Share it with someone still caught in noise who needs the stillness of Stoic wisdom. Subscribe to Marcus Aurelius Stoic Resilience for weekly reminders, reflections, and timeless Stoic lessons together. We walk not as broken voices, but as grounded minds, not chasing noise, but embracing calm, not pulled by the world, but anchored in ourselves. Stay grounded, stay grateful, stay stoic.